Everyone, it's good to have you here. Today is Tuesday, the 7th of August, 2018. That's our Weber County Commission meeting. Seated to my right is Commissioner Scott Jenkins. Seated to my left is Commissioner James Ebert, and I'm Commissioner Jim Harvey.
Did you forget who I was for a second?
For just half of a second I did. Never mind. Our invocation today will be given by Chris Crockett, and there he is right there. Thank you, Chris. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Cortland Erickson, and our Thought of the Day today will be given by Commissioner Jenkins. We'll go to that point. Mr. Crockett.
Our kind Father in heaven, we bow our heads before Thee this day at the beginning of this commission meeting to offer up our gratitude to be members of this community and to be servants for those living here. We are grateful to be citizens of this great country, and we ask that Thou will please provide ways for us to show that gratitude and to support those who are leading this country in an effort to help others around us. We are mindful of the fires that are burning across the country and ask that Thou will please protect those fighting those fires and those who our homes are in harm's way. We ask that Thou will please bless us with opportunities to serve others around us, to help improve the lives of those around us. And these things we ask for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and say
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, my thought of the day has to go with Annie, get your gun. I went to that meeting last night to the show last night with the county employees, and I have to admit I was way impressed with the production, what was happening, and the camaraderie that existed there, and it makes me really excited to see the Perry Egyptian Theater used on a regular basis like that. It kind of brings back to the old times. But I also wanted to know, if you've ever been in there and you've looked on the walls, there's some vents, or looks like vents on the walls. And I always thought, what were those for? And I was informed, not last night, but the last time I was there, that when that building was originally built, they put ice in there. And the air would come down that vent behind them and across that ice, and it would cool the room. And that was some of the first air conditioning in the state, or in the city. And I was really surprised me because I didn't know that is what that was used for. Anyway, my thought of the day.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that part about our air conditioning from days gone by. It is cool. The things they do. All right. We have public comment section now at the first of our agenda. For those people who have come and would like to comment on things that are pertaining to the agenda, now would be the time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if you'd come when you come to the pulpit here, or podium, if you'd just state your name and your address. Are there any that would like to address the commission? None being recognized, we'll move on. For all of you, I'd like to let you know that this week is a big week for Weber County. All weeks are a big week for Weber County, but this one in particular, and I'm a little more fond of it. It's the second week of August. Every year, this would be my 25th, but every year, the second week of August, we have our Weber County Fair. And our Weber County Fair this year, the tagline of it is, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and so you'll see different shirts, some of them in pink, and this year many of the employees are talking about that. It goes on, it starts tomorrow, Wednesday. It goes Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and we encourage all of you to bring your families. It's a affordable opportunity to experience, one of the, it's the biggest fair in the state of Utah, outside the state fair. It's the biggest county fair. It's a great experience. So we encourage you to go to that and attend that. Just another thing that we're doing, the Winning in Weber, hashtag Winning in Weber thing. We'll now move, commissioners, to, oh, yeah. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair,
Sir?
I thought you might want to make a report in the form of a comment on our Spartan games last week that we went up to.
I'd love that.
Go ahead.
Well, last weekend, well, I should say 2 weekends ago, about 8 days ago, Weber County held a nationally recognized race, and I shouldn't say Weber County did. The Spartan folks held a race in the upper valley of Weber County. It was held at Nordic Valley. Many of you know Nordic Valley. It's a race it's between 8 and 11 miles long, depending on which race it is. And this one had 22 different obstacles, from climbing up and over something that's 20 feet in the air to having to cross. They dug out pits and water and mud, and they had to go over under razor wire that was in different types of things. It's just really a fitness marvel. What did you think up there?
Oh, I was really impressed with it. You go up there and you think there's a few thousand people on that hill. And when we pulled up to the parking lot, and the line to load the buses was 300 yards long. I was like, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe how many people were up there. Besides the 9,000 contestants, they had about 2 to 1. So that would have been another 18,000 that were there on top of the 9. And it was amazing. It was amazing to watch what they were doing. I just quite taken back by the quality of what it all was. And, you know, the economic value it brings to our community, $2 million.
My hat's off to the Spartan organization and how well they managed the people in the parking lot. You'd think with that many people in the cars, but they were all taken off the road. They all lined up off the road into a shuttle, and then pulled up with masses, and they transported them to the Nordic Valley area. And then that's where they all played their games. They had a village, so to speak, with a band, and a lot of they give back to our military. That's a good give back, a good community give back, and like you said, to all of the hotel rooms from Box Elder County through Davis County, including all Weber County, were all full with these contestants. 85% were from out of town.
Right.
So that creates a tremendous economic impact for our Weber County. So just another thing that we do, a lot of people don't know about, but we do here in Weber County.
For our economy, that's probably one of the better deals we do.
Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you. Any others? Very good. Then we'll move on. We have our Chief Deputy Jason Talbot here, going to make a presentation today, a Seal of Service Award to Dr. Kay Haw from the Weber County Sheriff's Office. If both of you would come and make that presentation.
Do you have a pre?
Yeah, oh yes. I thought you had maybe had a little something to say about that.
If you got it.
I've got it right here. I'll hand this to you here.
All right. I've had the opportunity to work with Dr. K for a few years, but really close the last couple of months. And so just a couple things. It takes a special person to be able to work in a jail and with the people that we work with, and to see the love that Dr. K has for the people that are there going through hard times, and also our staff is unbelievable. And so nobody deserves this more. And I appreciate all you do for us and the county, and especially the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you.
So there's a Seal of Service Award for Dr. K. Hall.
Thank you.
You're on the hot seat.
Okay, thank you. I'll stand right here and answer your questions.
So it's awesome to have you here, and we'll pat you on the back, but I don't think that explains what you do.
No, that's okay.
Not at all. And so from years of being attuned somewhat to the sheriff's office because of friends and family, it's good for us to take these opportunities to explain to the commission, but also to the citizens out there, the tremendous job, but also the challenges that we face across the sheriff's office. So a couple quick questions. How many inmates do you think your staff sees a month?
A month?
Yeah. On an estimation.
Wow. It's kind of a hard number because we have so many different sick calls and emergencies we respond to, considering all the bookings that we do that get a face-to-face intake within 2 hours of being booked in.
So it's
several hundred.
That's an important part of this, is understanding that the inmates are seen as they're booked in to assess, to make sure there's no liability or health issues every single day. Do you have any of the information on the pharmaceuticals that you, through the doctor, dispense? Any idea how many pills you hand out?
Oh, wow. I can't give you an exact number, but I would say probably 60%, if not more, of our population are on medications at least twice a day.
So that's anywhere from probably $15,000 to $20,000 a month through pharmaceuticals that are dispensed easily.
Yep.
Your population, are they usually in a good mood and happy to see you?
It depends on the time of day and kind of what they're being booked in for. So there are times when absolutely I feel that the inmates view us in medical as their advocates, truly, because we are their voice, their eyes and their ears, and we do take care of them when sometimes they're at their lowest. So they do reach out to us. So I think overall they probably are glad to see us, even though sometimes they don't express that.
Again, for me, it's important that we let the citizens know. What is your staffing? What do you think probably your biggest staffing challenge you have right now in the
nursing shortage? I have a lot of my nursing staff that recently have moved to other counties due to salary issues or shift differential issues, which is included in the salary. That's really mostly the reason that they're leaving. And it's heart-wrenching for me just because I've been with them for so long. It'll be 8 years. And a lot of them have been there longer than me, but they're moving on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would just like to say thank you. I know many times we talk about law enforcement, but I think sometimes we forget about the challenge that corrections has. You know, I saw a little Facebook post and it had a law enforcement deputy and a corrections officer, and it said, law enforcement deputies getting out there to face possibly very violent individuals, and he may run into them, and it's show the corrections officer, well, everyone he sees is a violent offender. And I think that spills over to all members of staff, especially into the nursing program.
Agreed.
You deal with a lot of different individuals with a lot of different challenges, but there always is that component of safety.
Absolutely.
And so thank you for taking that challenge.
Agreed.
You could go anywhere and use your skills in nursing, which is a high demand.
Thank you.
But you choose to work here in Weber County in corrections, which is a very difficult assignment.
I love my job.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're here. So thank you very much, Kay. And again,
Thank
if we
you.
can give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
We're going to, Kay, one more moment there. Hold on.
Yes.
For those in the audience and those who may watch this today or live or later, the Seal of Service Award is given to a Weber County employee who's shown genuine care, concern, and love for what they do. This award represents you, Kay, this quarter as our outstanding employee at Weber County.
Thank you.
For the years I've known you, You've always been genuine. You've always cared about others. And as you stated, sometimes you, or many times you see them at their lowest state. I don't imagine there are many who get booked in and say, "Oh, wow, I've been waiting for this to happen for a long time."
True.
Thank you so much on behalf of the citizens of Weber County. Thank you so much for being a person who does it out of love
Thank you.
and
Appreciate
what
it.
you've given. So what we'd like to do now is I've got one more thing to present to you, and we'll do that down, but we'd like to get a picture.
Okay.
It's worth,
Okay.
it's worth waiting for.
All right. Where do you want me to go? Up here? Okay.
Another thing that happens when you're a SEAL for Weber County is when you're a SEAL of Service Award winner, there's one more person who likes to say thank you, and that's Benjamin Franklin. And so, do you know Benjamin? You've seen him before? No, but.
Right, right, true.
So that comes with it. So-
Thank you.
1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Commissioners, we have another presentation today. It's it's our presentation on our fire level activity and fire conditions by Captain Rick Cooper. Mr. Cooper, thanks for coming in from Weber Fire District. We appreciate you.
He came down from heaven.
Yeah, no. When I talk to you guys, it's usually, we have a problem.
Yes.
It's like the Houston, we have a problem.
Now, you also have come with great recommendations. We appreciate you, Coop. Thanks for being here today. Go ahead.
No, thank you. I thought it'd be kind of a good idea to get with the public officials throughout, not only the commissioners, but everybody through the district, and let everybody know kind of where our fire season is at and the potential where it's heading. Starting out of the fire season, looking back in May, we was really concerned with the potential snowpack left, and we knew by July 1 we would be in advanced fire behavior and above fire potential level activity through the entire state of Utah, which we have seen all summer long. So far, we've dodged a bullet, but it's only going to get worse from here until we see a substantial rain. And it's not only the low elevations, but it's also the high elevations that's really starting to concern fire management, not only on the local level, but also the state and federal level. Our last field conditions that I looked at was, and you may not understand everything, but when we start looking at field moistures and our sagebrush and our gambrel oak and our mountain maple, we start looking at things, anything below 120% normal moisture content, that we start looking at extreme and advanced fire behavior. So if we had a fire establish, and unlike the Uinta fire, that was a wind-driven incident, if we had something established into a large group of oak or maple, we, as standard firefighting resources, engines and stuff like that, will not be able to fight that fire. It will turn into an aircraft shell from there. Currently, as of yesterday, we are sitting at county-wide average 110% of normal moisture content. We are on the threshold of that extreme to advanced fire behavior. That's kind of got all of us managers very, very, very nervous. We are looking at some dry lightning coming through here shortly next week, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed. The high elevations are a little bit better but those conditions are going to continue the downslope trend. And I would suspect by the middle of next week, by the middle of August, I think we'll start seeing our heavy fuels, our timber, our pines, probably into that 100 to 90% range. And that's getting very dangerous. So, any questions up to this point? No? Okay.
To give an example though, Rick,
Sure.
you reported to me on the day after the 4th of July, the 5th of July, can you report again just so they come from your words, the number of incidents we had between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.?
On the 4th of July,
Yeah.
we had 19 grass fires reported on the 4th of July.
Most people don't know that.
No.
And the reason they don't know that is because how many of them were contained?
We had 100% contained with one engine or less on the 4th of July. We had no fire go any larger than a quarter of an acre on the 4th.
And that to me shows your level of preparation and being proactive. So we
Yes.
didn't have to be reactive. That was phenomenal. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's been a lot of hard work, and I'll kind of get into the restrictions a little bit, but, I just want to firsthand out say, getting the message out, Holland has been an outstanding person to help us out. Sasha, and getting those message out quickly and getting those restrictions posted. From what I understand, we had over 20,000 views of the fire restrictions so far this year. So that's good. So
That lends to our point is so we don't have to be reactive. If we're proactive with the public,
Yes.
then it helps.
and that's what we're trying to do, is trying to be a little bit proactive across the board to minimize the fire behavior and the fires that are escaping. Countywide, our resources are way better prepared than they were 5 years ago when I took over. And that's just not Weber Fire District, that's all agencies within the county. We build a stronger rapport with one another, and more or less response plans and has benefited us greatly. It's a godsend that they finally came together and said, hey, we need to fix this. So, got a long work to go, but we're working on it. To kind of continue our fire level activity to year to date for 2017, we had 23 reported grass fires over a quarter of an acre in size last year. And that was up to August. Today is August 7th. I pulled the report. Today, in 2018, we're sitting at 21 at a quarter acre larger. So we're right at an average response, and I hope we can keep it that way. And hopefully we'll get our downslope trend, but I don't think it will. I just kind of want to, and keeping the fires under a quarter of an acre is our goal, and that was set by the state as a mandate to try to keep every grass fire initial response fire not at a quarter of an acre, but they wanted us to keep it at 10 acres or smaller. And we're definitely doing that in Weber County. We're keeping everything at right. We're getting some 3 to 4, 5 to 10 acre fires, but the bulk of them are right at a quarter of an acre. And that's directly responsible for that response plan that we went through. So we're getting more resources quicker on scene, and then our overhead support has grown exponentially. And so not only myself, but I have 3 assistant wildland officers that help me throughout the summer. Their qualifications are just as high as mine. So the overhead support has been great over the last 2 years. And so I commend those guys for stepping up to the plate and taking on those tasks to keep overhead coming and keeping our crew safe and making the right decisions at the right time. And that's where our goal is. Kind of want to talk a little bit about nationally and locally fire level activity, and what I look at is what our preparedness levels are, and PL level is what I'll refer to as a preparedness level. 1 is like nothing burning, nothing, that's just the average, that's like nothing. PL5 or preparedness level 5, that's everything is on fire. And there are no available resources to help on anything that grows big. Currently, nationally, and that's the entire United States, we're sitting at a PL of 5. As you can see, all the fires in the area. And then we also look at local or geographical coordinating center, which is the Great Basin is where we're sitting, which encompasses Utah, Nevada, southern Idaho, and eastern Wyoming. And that's our response area. We are sitting at a PL of 5, which is not good because that really puts us down to a minimal initial attack resources on the state and the federal side and aircraft. So anything that gets established now until conditions improve, aircraft and those additional resources, not that we rely on, but it gives us a boost to suppress those fires, are at an extremely low, minimal level right now. Saturday night, we had a fire at the gun range. We got it contained to 1 acre. My nearest federal engine was 2.5 hours away, and we had no aircraft anywhere my nearest helicopter was coming out of Cedar City. And so you can kind of see how, at this point level, how nervous that I'm getting. I actually am 46, but I've aged 5 years. I'm 51 since July 1. I'm not saying that it's old. I just feel a little older. So I used to be 46. I feel like I'm 51 now. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, Commissioner. So, anyways, I just kind of want to let you guys know we are sitting at a preparedness level 5. And Weber Fire District is fully committed to keeping the county protected on wildland. I'm actually holding national resources out of the district back. I'm only sending 1 engine nationally and keeping 1 engine locally. So I will have, and I'm holding an additional 3 Alpha unit, that's our call sign. It's our wildland officers back in the county until conditions improve. I just need the overhead support. Is our area, our county, our district is more important than what's going on in California or anywhere else. So I've actually talked with Chief Sullivan, and we're going to hold additional 3 Alpha units back into the county until conditions improve. So that will hopefully make everybody sleep a little bit better. Doesn't make me. We are in full wildland full restrictions countywide. We have been since July 5th. When that notice came out, I immediately called Holland, I called Britt, and they had those notices out very quickly. I've actually had people call me at my office and say, hey, thank you for putting that on the website, so we fully understand. So there are no fireworks, there's no open burning except for ag. And even at the agricultural level, if we're in a red flag warning, at these conditions, we can shut down the agricultural community from burning. No campfires unless they're in an approved fire pit. And I recently have closed both Memorial Park campground open fires and charcoal briquettes, and the North Fork campground too. The North Fork was not posted. I was headed away. It was diverted to a fire up the canyon last week, and I just haven't made it back up there yet to get that posted. So that was the biggest threat we have right now was minimal resources and our fuel conditions, and not only on the wildland side of it, but our urban wildland interface areas. They're the areas that are really starting to concern me now. July 5th, we had a grass fire in the Durfee Creek HOA, took out 4.5 acres. We were able to get it stopped, but the oak had started to oil out. As I was going through the Upper Valley last week, all of the oak has oiled and is starting to go dormant now. And even we've actually got a little bit of kill up there So until conditions improve, we could honestly see a catastrophic event occur in the county and under the conditions that we're in. So that's all I have.
So we're waiting for rain.
Yes. And unfortunately, looking at the long-term forecast, I do not see anything for the next 30 to 45 days. Substantial. To where it would really make a difference in our fuel moistures. We might get a tenth here, might get a quarter here, but we are so deficit that that's not going to do a whole lot for us. It would subside it for maybe a day or two, but we would be right back where we would be on the first 90-degree day.
Well, thank you for that piece of information. Rick,
You're welcome.
is there anything else you need to share with us?
No. You guys have questions?
So, I flew in last week from the north, and it was interesting. When you get over Washington and Oregon, you can see the smoke starting, and you get into Idaho, and it was terrible. And by the time you got into Utah, good night. Our air was so bad, it was amazing. So as far as, and you know, that's all air that's coming in from outside the state. Box Elder County, are they all contained up there now?
No, they are not. On my last report, they had 4 new starts yesterday in Box Elder County. And
Are these rangeland fires?
yes and no. They are both out on the flat desert, but they are also getting up into the smaller hills, more into the forested areas.
Yeah.
The big one, the China Gym fire, which is in northwest, the Grouse Creek area, is now grown to 150,000 and only at 56% contained. Actually, Saturday night, I had a phone call from their chief out of Box Elder County, was requesting immediate structure engine response to Box Elder County to Yost to protect homes. And we obliged them, and then they were shortly canceled.
So from our point of view here, air quality and what's affecting us, Box Elder County is really the toughest one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with that, you're getting a lot of that smoke blowing into Weber County, and that's where a lot of our smoke is coming from, that lower haze. And on the 27th of July, we didn't improve that any. We had a fire in the Ogden Bay area that was just over 200 acres that we filled the valley full of smoke, and not only Box Elder, but we had a lightning strike out there, and we had to do some pretty aggressive burning. So we do apologize for that. I kept Holland and Lance in the loop and let them know what was going on, and our PIOs. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate you coming and letting us know, informing us, and hopefully what you said today will encourage those to adhere to the restrictions that are out there, so we absolutely minimize any man-made incidents.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll keep you posted.
Great. Our next presentation, Commissioners, today will be given by Scott Park, our comptroller. It'll be a presentation on the second quarter of 2018 financials. I'm hoping that usually when we talk about budgets, I'm hoping that news good. We had some good news, then some not so good news. Let's bring her back up, can you?
All right, we'll do our best right here. So you should have in front of you the second quarter financial report for the general fund, the municipal services fund, and our enterprise funds. I'll start with the expenditure side by saying there's really not much interesting to report. Our expenditures are right where we expect them to be for this time of the year. And, you know, looking through the detail of the expenditures, we didn't see anything that caused us any concern or anything that we felt worthy to bring up in this meeting. I think we're right on track where we expected to be at this time of the year. Revenues are a different story, however, and you wanted a little bit of good news, and so I'll give it to you. Our revenue forecasts last year, we're always conservative in our estimates when we're projecting our growth for property tax and sales tax. Last year, we projected a 4% sales tax growth, and we're actually on track to experience about a 6.8% sales tax growth. So sales taxes make up a huge percentage of the county's budget, but it does make up about a $10 million portion of the county's general fund budget. And so, getting an extra $200,000 to $300,000 on sales tax revenue is actually a good thing. Our property tax, we are very conservative on our property tax because that is the primary source of revenue to Weber County. We had estimated about a 1.75% growth rate for 2018. And with the economy, we actually been growing over 4%. Now, a portion of that is because we had one RDA come off a year earlier. We hadn't planned on that. We planned on it coming in. So if you adjust that out, we're closer to about a 3.3% actual growth rate when we were expecting about a 1.75. So not quite double, but almost double what we were getting. And so that would result in, we're anticipating approximately $700,000 of additional revenue coming into the county this year. We will use these new numbers when we are projecting our revenues for the coming year, 2019. But on the revenue side, we're actually in pretty good shape. Now, as always, anything that affects the general economy could affect us, and so we're still conservative. Don't want to spend any of this money yet till we actually get it in the bank, but our projections are good for the year. So unless you have any questions, I'll submit to you that as the second quarter financial report.
It's great news, Commissioner. Commissioner? No. Scott, thanks for bringing that. We expect something similar in the third and fourth quarters. If you could just make that happen.
I'll see what I can do.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Commissioners, we're going to move now on to item G on our agenda, our consent items, and I'll go through those for a matter of the public. And our item number 1 is a request for approval of warrants 1511 and through and including 1516 and 430667 to 430887 in the amount of $1,521,871.05. Item number 2 on our consent item is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $78,730.66. Item number 3 is a request for approval of minutes for meetings held on the 31st of July 2018. Item number 4 is a request for approval of a new business license or new business licenses. Item 5 is a request for approval to set the date of August 14th, 2018 at 10 a.m. for a public hearing to consider and take action on a request to vacate a portion of lot number 1 in the Pelican Bluff subdivision. And item number 6 is a request for approval of an addendum to a contract by and between Weber County and CenturyLink, agreeing to a new price structure that lowers the price. Commissioners, any questions on any of those consent items?
No.
None being heard. Mr. Hatch, would you go over a little bit of detail for us, please?
Absolutely. We issued 9 purchase orders this week for $79,000. Just over half of that amount, or $42,000, was for the library, and that will go to replace the Ogden Valley Library septic system and also install the lightning protection system at the headquarters library. 20% of that amount, or $16,000, is for economic development, and that is the June and July payments for our DICHIO group. As far as checks go, we issued 226 checks this week for $1.5 million. 1/3 of that amount, or $496,000, was escrow releases and adjustments, and that was primarily for the Horizon Neighborhood and Sunset Quest. Commissioner Jenkins, that is in relation, the bulk of that went to the Summit Mountain Holdings Group. That was the payee on those escrow releases.
Good.
14%.
So that's Saddleback Development. Was that also one of those?
I don't recall seeing Saddleback. There were only 3 escrow adjustments releases, and I don't recall seeing Saddleback in one of those.
I can't recall for sure, but I think we had an adjustment in the development where the development was downsized, so the escrow was adjusted. Do you remember? I don't have it.
I remember that. That was a presentation given probably 2 or 3 commission meetings ago, and we unanimously voted to take care of that.
I think it was in about $200,000 to $300,000 adjustment of that escrow.
Would that
maybe?
Yes, and one of the payment descriptions was an escrow adjustment, so it's not fully just releases. Let's see, 14%, or $215,000, was for our elections office, and that is to purchase voting equipment, which worked in. This was the actual payment for the system we used in June, which worked fantastically, and we're really excited to have that system in place. 10%, or $154,000, was through dispatch, and that was primarily telephone charges. And again, Commissioner Jenkins, your question about Quest, that is actually for CenturyLink. The system lookup still shows it under request, but those are payments to CenturyLink. There was a small $15,000 amount that went for IT purchases, but primarily that was dispatch.
So would you say it goes to telephones? Can you explain that to me in a little detail? I mean, $146,000, that buys a lot of telephones.
Yes, this isn't, my understanding is that this is not purchase of new equipment. This is the standard charges that go to the various numbers used throughout dispatch as well as the county. In looking at the detail, I saw.
Is that a monthly charge?
I'm not sure. I believe it's going to be monthly. I haven't seen the consistency among that. But when you look at the amount of lines coming in to provide dispatch with full coverage during peak call times, and the ability to also help with additional regional types of calls because they do provide backup services for each other, I suspect that is the reason for the high cost for communications.
They have to pay T1 lines. There's a tremendous amount of services, but Ricky would not have that information because that's not under his purview. That's under the ops board. So that Tina would have to answer those questions. That would be a bill that would be sent to the county because we collect the dollars. Correct?
Correct. In essence, we function as the bookkeeper for 911.
Runs through us.
So that's a question for the 911 board.
Yes, the actual substance of it, we go through the approval. It runs through our approval process, whereas we take a look at it and it's subject to commission approval. But their dispatch is responsible for the contracting and agreement with CenturyLink.
Commissioners, any more questions? Mr. Hatch, any more for you?
That's
Great.
all, thanks.
Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion on the consent items. I have a motion by Commissioner Jenkins, a second by Commissioner Ebert. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those consent items carry. Thank you for your query on that. Item number H is our action items, and we'll go in this order. First one is Ms. Stephanie Ebert. First one is a request for approval of a memorandum of understanding by and between Weber County and Ogden City for the purpose of distributing JAG grant funds. Ms. Ebert.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
I'm excited to be here today to present this agreement. The federal government actually had a hold on these funds for the past year, which affected our JAG grant from last year as well as this year. But on July 23rd, they've opened that back up again. So Ogden City submits an application on our behalf. We are treated as a disparate agency. We don't qualify for the grant on our own because we don't have enough Part 1 crimes in Weber County in our jurisdiction, but Ogden City does. And since Ogden City falls within Weber County, we are able to submit that application with them. The total grant for the year is $58,997, of which Weber County will receive $5,900, and Ogden City will receive $53,097 of that grant amount. And Weber County intends on using those funds this year to create a safe exchange zone in the parking lot of our sheriff's complex. That is an area that individuals can go. It's a well-lit area available 24/7 in our parking lot. We'll have a camera installed, and it's an area that people can use to exchange children, child custody issues, or we have such a large online purchases that are made, a number of purchases that are made online that people can use our safe exchange zone to go to buy and sell these items kind of in a neutral zone. And so we're excited to be able to provide the community that service. I believe Ogden City has one. There are a couple of other agencies, Layton. I don't know what other agencies in Weber County have one, but we have been looking at this for a while, and we put it on hold while we were transitioning our new road into the facility. We had all that construction, so that is what we intend to use the money for this year.
Very good, thank you. Commissioners, entertain any questions for Ms. Ebert?
Question. So did you say 59,000?
The total grant is about $59,000. Weber County will receive $5,900.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, great. Commissioners, no other questions being heard. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and seconded to approve this memorandum of understanding between Weber County and Ogden City for the purpose of distributing the JAG grant funds. All in favor? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ebert. Cortland, wait.
So really quickly, I contacted Tina, and she said that this payment that you were questioning, that you had a concern about, now you were questioning, is for maintenance for the 911 system. And they actually have a grant, but they have to get a pre-approved upfront payment, and then it will be 100% reimbursed.
That's good.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're on number 2, the action item. Cortland? Oh, wait. I just wanted to see you sit up. No, just kidding. It's a request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County authorizing the filing and cost appeals for the 2018 centrally assessed properties. Mr. Erickson, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is the second one of these resolutions that's before you because of the timelines that are established under state law. The Tax Commission sends out its assessments at the beginning of May. Taxpayers have until August 1st to submit their appeals. Pacific Corp sent its appeal at the beginning of May. The county, if it wants to become a party to the appeal, has 60 days to file a cross appeal. So you authorized the filing in the Pacific Corp case about a month ago. Since then, since the end of June through August 1st, we had 6 additional taxpayers: CenturyLink, AT&T, Pioneer Pipeline Company, Compass Minerals, Union Pacific, and Integra Telecom file appeals. And so the resolution that is before you today for consideration would authorize the county attorney's office to file a cross appeal, a request to be a party to those appeals so that we can have a voice and participate in any litigation or any settlement agreements that are discussed. So that is the proposal that's before you today.
Before asking for questions, I'll make a statement. Commissioners, this is information that Mr. Erickson has forwarded to all of us via email quite some time ago. I've had a discussion with him regarding it and feel like it would be in the best interest of the county to move forward with this. And so I'll entertain now any questions for Mr. Erickson regarding this. None being heard, I'd entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Have a motion?
It's a resolution 38.
Resolution 38.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. There's no other questions, none being heard. Fatima, call for the vote.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
And Chair Harvey?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a statement you wanted to make about hay fever?
No, I'm having a hay fever issue here. I apologize.
I'm sorry that's happening for you. Okay, item number 3 is by Brian Barron. Hello, Brian. It's a request for approval of contract signed between Weber County and the following attorneys to provide indigent defense counsel on capital cases for Randall Marshall and James Ritalik.
Yes.
And Martin Gravis and Jason Widdison. Or Gravis, I'm sorry. And Jason Widdison. Brian?
Commissioners, as you already know, the county has an obligation under state code to provide defense counsel to indigent defendants. And we have multiple contracts with different attorneys to provide those services. Those contracts, however, specifically state that they do not cover death penalty cases. And that's because of the amount of time and work that goes into those cases. And so when our county attorney decided to seek the death penalty last month in the Brenda Emily and Miller Eric Castillo cases, it triggered our obligation to go out and enter into new contracts for defense counsel for them. In addition, Rule 8 of the Rules of Criminal Procedure requires the county to hire not just one, but 2 attorneys for each of these defendants. And they have to meet specific qualifications. They have to have a certain number of years of experience, and they have to have tried a certain number of felony cases. And so we have decided to hire these attorneys. They meet the qualifications under Rule 8. They were actually the attorneys who were appointed to these cases previously. Our indigent defense coordinator knew that it was a possibility that the death penalty would be sought in these cases, and so in anticipation of that, he assigned 2 attorneys who are qualified to handle those cases to these when they were initially filed. So these are the contracts for these attorneys to continue representing these defendants. I'm happy to answer any questions about the contracts if you have any.
Commissioners, any questions?
Do we have 2 sets because we have 2 defendants?
Yes, that's right.
And I apologize. What is the total cost estimate?
The total cost estimate, it's kind of a shot in the dark because we have no idea how long these cases are going to go or how much they're ultimately going to cost. But I did a GRAMA request. The state has a fund set up to pay for capital defense cases for those counties that participate. I sent a GRAMA request to them asking for the data for the last 9 cases that were resolved and created some averages. It looks like it's about $220,000 per case based on those past 9 cases that were resolved.
And we participate in that fund?
We don't.
So if we were to participate in that fund, what would that save us?
I don't know what the cost is to participate in the fund, but I know that when it was initially set up, the county decided not to participate because of the cost. We didn't see that it was going to be financially beneficial to the county.
So we basically, because of state statute, this is frustrating, so I'll make sometimes it's better not to say anything, but on this particular case, or this particular line item, I think it's well for the public to understand maybe what I've learned or that you all have shared with me recently. People in the community make horrible decisions. Each county taxpayer, their property taxes, has to pay for it because of state code. That bothers me. Bothers me, one, on the front side that the people make stupid decisions. Bothers me on the back side that we as taxpayers have to pay for it. But our hands are tied. The only thing else we can do, instead of not paying this, is to drop the charge. And that's not right either.
Right.
That's frustrating. I don't like being painted into a corner, especially when I can't leap over the paint line to get to the threshold. It's a big room. Commissioners, any thoughts or ideas? Then we basically, our hands are tied and we don't have any option. Then basically I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion.
Second.
And a second to approve the request for contracts between Weber County and the Indigent Defense Council on the 2 capital cases. No more discussion being heard. All in favor? Aye. Those contracts carry. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We'll now, Commissioners, we're going to move to item I on our agenda. It's a public hearing. A request for a motion to adjourn the public hearing, adjourn the public meeting and convene a public hearing. I'll entertain that motion now.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're now in a public hearing. Item number 1, Charlie Ewert. It's a public hearing to discuss, take comment on, and make decision regarding the proposal to amend following parts of Weber County Code, which would be 102-1, 104, all of it, 106-2, 108, all of it, to make decisions for planned residential unit developments, legislative and not administrative, by creating a planned residential unit overlay zone and repealing the planned residential unit entitlement and administrative criteria from each zone and the standards chapter, and to add flexibility, lot width, and lot area standards into the subdivision code in a manner that allows flexibility and diversity of lot types in a subdivision while not increasing overall dwelling unit density. Charlie, go ahead with this one.
Thank you, Commissioner. A lot of words. Let's figure out what that means. So last year, just a quick recap on history for Commissioner Jenkins.
Excuse me just a quick second, Charlie. Fatima, can you turn him down just a little bit to get that squelch out of there?
Do you want me to just stop yelling?
No, it's just a moment. It's...
Pretty good with that squad.
I thought he sounded pretty good. That squeak's driving me crazy.
This is part of my voice. I'm sorry about that.
That's great. Thank you. Charlie, go ahead. Thank you, Fatima.
Put a low beat to the background. We should
Go ahead.
make this fun. So last year we had an application to change the PRUD code. Up until this point, our PRUD, Planned Residential Unit Development Code, is a list of standards that go with a PRUD decision. PRUDs are listed in a whole bunch of different zones as being an allowed development type. And we know if it's an allowed development type listed in the code that landowners have an entitlement to ask for it. And if they ask for it, they have an entitlement to be approved if they comply with all aspects of the standards listed in the code. So last year we had a request to amend that code, and the request to amend the code was to reduce the amount of resulting single-family residential dwellings that could come with a PRUD from 24 down to 8 under certain circumstances. The Ogden Valley Planning Commission said, no thanks. We don't want to make changes to the PRUD code. Not necessarily because we don't like the idea of reducing it from 8 under certain circumstances, but because there are issues with the PRUD code that they didn't want to expand the problem to. When that came before the county commission, we talked about the specific request that the applicant had asked for, and the commissioners, it sounded a little bit like you had the same level of concern that the planning commission had, and that is that the PRUD code is way too flexible and way too open-ended, given that it is an entitlement listed in certain zones, that as long as the developer can comply with the requirements of the code, we are obligated to say, yes, you can have this type of development. The challenge is the PRUD code says that the developer has the ability, through the county commission's decision, to modify any standard that applies listed anywhere in the land use code. It's a big open-ended question mark on what they can do, but they're entitled to do whatever that thing is. The code itself is written with what looks like unlimited legislative discretion in decision making, but it's not a legislative decision, it's an administrative decision, so you'd have to approve it. It makes a complicated and convoluted situation where we don't have predictable outcomes.
I think what happened many times is because it was so flexible, the reality of it is it would come from the planning commission and from staff with recommendations. And that put the staff and the planning commission in this untenable situation where they were trying to balance the wants and the needs of the commission and the community against the developers. And it just put everybody in this position where there was sometimes no winners. And so we needed to have a more structured PRUD. So we didn't have staff have to make these arbitrary decisions from one development to the next.
That's right. So a number of communities have PRUDs or PUD ordinances, and they all have flexible development rules in them. It's an alternative development type, kind of designed in a way where a developer can come in and propose something that isn't otherwise the cookie cutter of our current code, something that benefits the community. But every single one of those jurisdictions, with the exception of one who looks like they just adopted the code that we have objective standards with objective findings. You know what you're going to get out of the decision that you're making. And the developer knows what he or she is going to get out of what he's asking. In the absence of that in our code, we have two options. One option is to get into the PRUD code and shore it up with objective standards. Or the other option, and the option that we're recommending to you right now, is to change the PRUD to a legislative decision, a zoning decision, as opposed to an administrative approval. And so what we have proposed in front of you is changing that ordinance to a PRUD overlay zone. A developer comes in and says, I want X, Y, or Z. It's going to look and shape and have a feel of something kind of like this. Do you like the proposal? And if you do, give me an overlay zone. Let's write a development agreement of the overall development plan that you guys have agreed upon, and we'll go ahead and move forward with developing that. It gives you the legislative ability to say, no, this doesn't work for us, or yes, what do you need from us to make this possibility? So that way you guys could look to the general plans, you could look to the public and the community on what it is that their community wants and desires for that particular piece of land, and work with the developer in mutual negotiation in getting the outcome that everybody's most comfortable with. But you're not obligated to say yes when they come in with a plan that you're not comfortable with. Does that make sense? So that's what this ordinance does. The request that came in last year was put on hold. It is drafted in and incorporated into this amendment. It's a very simple request, but this amendment essentially rewrites the PRUD rules, so it's not administrative, it's legislative. I'm happy to go through it in detail to walk you through each point if you want me to, or if you're read up on it and you're comfortable with the direction we're going, I'm happy to sit down and let you work your magic. Up to you guys, Chair, on how you want this to proceed today.
Thank you. Charlie. Commissioners, I'll entertain questions for Mr. Ewart at this time on this item.
I would like to walk through this.
Great.
That's great. Let's do that.
Okay. So this is part of your packet. Line numbers should all reflect. Also, before we get too far into this, I've been working with the county attorney's office to make sure we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's the right way. There's a couple of changes that they've asked that are just clerical and administrative in nature, nothing policy oriented. So I'm asking the commission just make this first reading, and then I could take your input back, make some changes, make the changes that the attorneys have asked, and
very good.
Come back again. Okay. So starting off with the first line numbers here, we're in the definition section. This is the definitions of the overall code. This is just administrative cleanup. Sometimes when I work on ordinances, I try and get in and make sure we're cleaning things up that otherwise don't make sense. We just adopted base density, as you can see down in here. I'm just giving a note to the codifiers to move where that is. So no big change there.
So you just move that from one area to another?
Yep, no big deal. We've also recently adopted a definition for public utility substation. Codifiers put it in a location that I thought was a little obscure. I'm just trying to provide another reference to that. This section here is an interesting section. Caught me off guard when I first was hired. It says, before finally adopting any such legislative amendment, the Board of County Commissioners shall hold a public hearing thereon, at least 14 days notice of the time and place which shall be given as per state code. The unanimous vote of the full body of the county commission is required to overturn the recommendation of the planning commission if there was a unanimous vote of the planning commission in favor of the denial of the petition. This paragraph is out of context and out of reference. It may be a mistake when our codifiers recodified in 2012. We don't know what this actually goes to. This may go to a rezone request, but there's a couple of things that we're challenged with. It says any such decision, and we don't know what such decisions is talking about, but then the last sentence says a full vote of this body is required to overturn any recommendation of the planning commission, which gives the planning commission a significant level of control over decision making that are legislative decisions in nature, and I don't think this is supported by state code. I would just recommend leaving it out. Let the planning commission offer the recommendations. And
Charlie, that's the 102-1 that you refer to here in the example that what we're speaking of, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Once we get down, starting on line 63, the next few sections is in Title 104 zones. The way our land use code is constructed, we've got an administrative section with definitions, we've got some procedural sections, and we have a zone section, 104. Right now we have 29 zones, actually 28 zones. We're asking for this to be a 29th zone. In our zoning chapters, a number of them, including our residential estate, RE15 and RE20 zones, has this line in it that says planned residential unit development in accordance with Title 108, Chapter 5 of this land use code. You can see it resting under conditional uses. If a developer comes in and this line exists in the zone in which they are going to develop, they are entitled to receive approval of a conditional use permit for planned residential unit development. We're just striking it off the record. Not saying that they can't ask for the overlay, but we're saying it's no longer administrative.
So why are you doing that? Why are you taking it? You say it's no longer administrative?
Right. So the challenge with the current PRUD code and the way that it is administratively is in the current PRUD code, there's a sentence or two in there that says any standard can be waived or modified. Under what rules and under what criteria any standard can be waived and modified is not listed, which you could see that kind of decision making in a legislative decision, but not an administrative decision. When you make an administrative decision, you're checking the boxes and you're making sure the developers have complied with the requirements of code.
So Charlie, one of the problems that we had is the first meeting we have is an administrative meeting. And in that meeting, we as commissioners can't override the administrative section of the ordinance. Is that correct, Rick? And so what happens is we have people show up, they're upset because a PRUD is coming in and how it's set up. They're having the first administrative hearing in front of the commission. We as a commission can't shut it down right there. If they meet the requirements of the administrative section, which is it that they're striking parts of it out right now, then we have to let it go forward to the next meeting, where as a commission we can make changes to it. Charlie, correct me. And so we have this first initial meeting where everyone's really upset because they want this and this and this in the PRUD, but it's an administrative meeting, and we can't at that point legislatively make a change to that administrative portion of the hearing. And so we have to take these items out so that they can't automatically box check them in. Does that sound right, Charlie?
Yeah, that does. State code says that a conditional use permit shall be approved. And there's very, very limited ability to deny it, and it's compelling, countervailing public interest, essentially. But where you've got a PRUD listed right next to a greenhouse, we know what a greenhouse looks like, how much land it takes, what it smells like. We have a lot of expectations on what a greenhouse is. So it's really easy for us to say, we get greenhouses, we're going to allow it to look like this and feel like this and shape like that, and we will approve it if you ask for it, because it's listed as being allowed. PRUDs are so open-ended, we don't know what the end product is. And so we do have people coming in saying, this is in the, for example, A1 zone, we're expecting 40,000 square foot lots, and you're approving condos, you're approving townhouses. How is that even possible? Removing this from these sections makes it no longer an entitlement. It changes it to a request that the developer can then ask for, and then they've got to provide a plan that actually works with what the commission's asking for. Okay, does that make sense? Why?
Mm-hmm. Then administratively, it can be culled out before it even comes to us.
You're setting new administrative rules for those requests. Okay. I want to talk about this here. This is an error. The county commission had asked us previously to consider a lot averaging standard. That is not part of the PRUD code. I brought it here before you guys just out of an abundance of efficiency, trying to get two things done at once. If you have a lot averaging standard in a 1 acre zone that requires 150 feet of frontage, you could potentially get the exact same number of homes out of a development, but maybe it's 80 feet of frontage with half-acre lots, and then the difference is made up with bigger lots and more frontage. I understand that there was someone who requested the code to be changed in that way, and I had some direction from this body to consider that with the Planning Commission. I took the idea with text that you have written in your staff report, but is not in this, to both planning commissions, and both planning commissions says, no, we think it undermines the cluster code that we just adopted, and we'd rather just see the cluster code prevail. So I just want to let you guys know that's where you see this here. If you do decide to approve that, which lot averaging is, again, not part of PRUDs, but it is kind of part of this request, this would stay. But if you don't decide to approve that, this would be deleted out.
Charlie, how does that affect us? I mean, again, one of the reasons we're looking at clustering in PRUDs is single-family dwellings from a county perspective and from many of your municipal perspectives is a subsidized dwelling unit that over long-term costs more money than it creates, which then affects tax rates, service delivery, and things like that. So there is a push somewhat in some municipalities and maybe from the county to create some clustering in areas where it makes sense.
Right.
Reducing the impact on infrastructure costs. It's initially picked up by the developer, but then as soon as it's platted and signed off, then it becomes our responsibility as the county or municipality. How does, and I don't think the Planning Commission always is understanding that. I mean, we're looking for fit and fill, which is what the responsibility is. Our responsibility is to take fit and fill and long-term financial responsibility. How do these two things mesh with what the Planning Commission is looking at and what we're trying to create under these changes?
I think what the Planning Commission is looking for is long-term preservation of viable agricultural parcels. Whether or not it stays agriculture is up to the landowner. And when they see options that could potentially shift that into 2-acre, 3-acre, 5-acre parcels instead of 10 acres of contiguous, potentially farmable land, I think they're a little bit more resistant to the idea. Even though it could potentially fit into the overall goal of preserving rural residential community. So I think what they want to see is the cluster subdivision code tried and tested first before we start looking at other options. Going back to your financial side of things, it's very true. The subdivision I live in on the east side of Ogden, we've got 10 times the amount of homes in an acre than what you might see out west. And the taxable value is different there, clearly. I'm not sure that the Planning Commission is as concerned about that as you mentioned.
Well, it's a balance we always have with Greenbelt, and farming, and property tax and growth, So I just want to make sure we keep our eye on what we're trying to accomplish, but still understanding what the Planning Commission is trying to accomplish. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So as we bounce through the rest of these, you can see it's the same sort of thing. Agriculture, A2 zone, just making it, I say reserve because we'll find something else to put into that slot. It doesn't shift all the other numbers, and so any reference doesn't get changed. A little easier and cleaner.
So before you go any further, go back one page. Did you take that out or leave it in that averaging?
40.
Yeah. Did you take that out or leave it in?
So this here is shown as left in. It's an error. It is removed from the code. I'll show you where it has been removed, and I'll show you in the staff report exactly what it did say, so you can review it.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears just real quick and let's look at that.
Okay. I'm interested. Why? So you've had a couple of what do you call these planning groups? The one up in the valley and the one out.
Planning Commission?
No, where you get the people together out at the schools and the...
No. You have these. Are they planning commissions? Aren't they a smaller planning commission?
No. So yeah, out west we've got the Western Weber Planning Commission. They govern the western part, any of the unincorporated islands and Uinta Highlands, and then Ogden Valley has their own planning commission.
Okay, so based on their thought that they don't like this averaging concept, you're willing to take that out?
Not a question of my willingness. This is ultimately a question of what the county commission wants.
Well, you say it's not, but you're presenting it to us as taking it out. You just said that. There was a mistake that it was going to be out.
Sorry, I can't get this up again. So what I'm presenting to you is what the Planning Commission's desire is. As far as staff's desire goes, we just wanted to make sure we got to you what the planning commission has asked for. State code says that planning commissions will create, and so does county code, will create ordinances to forward for recommendation to the county commission. So we're forwarding you their recommendation.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Harvey here. This interests me.
I'd like to,
Yeah.
you two, Stetson, and can we get that back up for him? Thank you.
I keep pushing buttons, I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
So it sounds like the planning commissions have made a suggestion that we make this more legislative than administrative. What are your thoughts on that? You think that's a better idea than creating code that is a little more laid out, so developers have an understanding of what we will and won't do? Or do you think it's better to have it loosey-goosey and then we have to make a decision if we're going to overlay something?
The answer is it depends. I do believe in creating strong ordinances that give a landowner a sense of expectation of what he can and cannot get, because that's quality government, it's quality ordinances. But when it comes to flexible innovation, it's hard to anticipate the gamut of what could come forward. Like I told you before, a number of communities have PUDs as entitlements and PRUDs as entitlements, and they just very specifically stated what they think they want out of that. Each of our communities are different. Each of our communities are going to want something different out of PRUDs. Other communities, Wasatch County has, I think they call it a transitional zone, and it's something quite similar to this. If it's something that fits the transition between this land use type and that land use type, come and propose it to us, make it innovative, make it creative, and make it comply with the general plan for the area, and we're going to be ready to accept it.
Could I venture out just for 2 seconds?
Venture.
Could I have a developer come up to the microphone really quickly? Eric, would you come on up? I want to ask you a question from a developer's perspective, if you don't mind. Would you just give your name and
Sure, Eric Householder with the Householder Group.
So Eric, you do a lot of development and you do everything from commercial to residential. From a developer's standpoint, understanding what we're looking at, a more structured PRUD or more open-ended PRUD where you'd have to come and look for overlays and go through that whole process. What are your thoughts about?
Well, I think my initial take would be, flexibility would be great, this has kind of worked its way through. There's nothing in here that I'm really opposed to. And I have to admit, I was half paying attention back there and half not. So I don't know if I can give you a good answer. But
yeah, I think the thing that in my mind, we have residents here who are concerned. We have, this affects the developers, it affects the residential. The residents. If we're looking at something that is a little more open-ended, but we have to go through a whole process, we take it to the community, see if the community will accept it in the form that it's been presented. That's a long process of changing zones, as opposed to a more structured ordinance that says, here's what PRUDs look like. Maybe we have 3 of them or 2 of them. And this is not maybe a cookie cutter, there is some flexibility in it, but then you can look at it and say, okay, this will work here. Here's my profit margin, I can build this. This is the property I have to, here's the zone I can build in. From a developer's perspective, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, if I'm understanding this correctly, I think on the front end, establishing these overlay zones would probably be the time-consuming thing. Is that correct? So once those are established, we kind of have a framework to work in, to bring our concept forward.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I don't think that's too much help. But
well, sorry to call you.
Please, Commissioner Jenkins.
So, Charlie, the reason I question this is because when you have that flexibility on those PRUDs, then you are allowed to take a corner lot, an inside corner lot, or a lot on a cul-de-sac, and you can minimize the frontage so that you don't have a lot that is so big that it deters and it creates a minimum. within the subdivision. Sometimes when you require a 100-foot frontage and you're on a cul-de-sac, it ends up with an acre and a half lot behind it.
Right.
And that's not in, it's not what you're trying to come up with here. That's why PRUDs were really developed in the first place, to allow some flexibility in all this. That way every subdivision isn't square, and they all look a little different. They're a little more comfortable to live in. It allows your land use to be used a little more efficiently.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what this is all about, is try to help people develop their properties correctly, but use the properties more efficiently so they can get the most out of it too. And we all want that.
Agreed. So a couple of things. I think to accomplish that goal could be done differently than PRUD. I've kind of confused this just a little bit because I've got this little section in your staff report. This is lot averaging, which goes right to exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Less than 150 feet, maybe it's 80 feet only or something to that extent. Let's have some flexibility of maybe there's less frontage for these lots and more frontage for those lots, as long as the average overall is what would otherwise be there if it was all normal. I think that can be accomplished through an administrative writing, which you can see right here, and placed right into your subdivision code. This is what was presented to both planning commissions, and both of them felt like it undermined the intent of the cluster code, and they wanted to see the cluster code thrive. That said, put that kind of in a different box than the whole PRUD, because the whole PRUD, the developer can come in and say, I want condos, not houses. And your code says that I can be as flexible as I want to be. Your code also allows it by conditional use permits, so you can't tell me no. And so I want condos here, and here's my traffic plan, and here's my impact plan, and here's my financial plan, and then it all says that everything's fine. And I think under those particular kinds of scenarios, we'd probably be compelled to say yes. So that's the challenge with PRUD, that's in this box. The challenge with flexible frontage and area is over here in this box. I just kind of put them together so that I didn't have to come to the microphone more than once. If that makes sense. We could separate them out.
It didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was just fine up until you started doing that, and then you said PRUDs is in this box, now I'm putting this in this box. So by putting this in this box and including it now up in this, what is?
It's in the.
Don't they now exist in conflict?
No, not necessarily. If they both go in the same code, they're both available. They're both allowed.
All right then.
They're just two different things.
So we're not removing it. They're just in a different part of the code.
The planning commissions have asked for it to be removed. If the county commission wants it back in there, we'll put them in, and they'll both be available for the landowner.
Good night. You just said they were in, and now you said the planning commissions want them removed.
Planning commissions do want them removed.
I do like removing it from the administrative section, so it's not a guarantee. But I think, and I feel like I'm getting from Commissioner Jenkins, we still want the flexibility to make an administrative decision or legislative decision to allow it. Does that sound?
Yeah. But the problem is, when you do it as a legislative decision, then you get to a point where it kicks them from their level up to ours.
Right.
And do you want to get to that level on every one of these that comes through? You see what I mean? All of a sudden we're becoming so involved in your jobs. I don't know if I want that, because that's your job.
Let me get those boxes out and clarify them just a little bit better.
How do we make that so that
we could split it apart so we're making two different decisions?
Please, I'm going to finish here. I'd like to make it so that the developer has a framework by which they can go and plan, and really the process would be expedited.
But not only the developer, but also the citizens, so they know what to expect.
That was going to be, it was comma, go ahead, and then you finish that, and there you go. That was exactly what I was going to say. I want the same thing for the citizens, so.
On the one side, on PRUDs, and we're specific specifically just talking about PRUDs and not lot averaging. I think there's a way to do that. There's a way to do exactly what you've just asked for. So let's put that over here because that's the majority of what we're talking about today. And let's put the lot averaging to bed, whether it's you're in favor or against it. Lot averaging could be placed in the subdivision code. Someone can get it by entitlement, by right. The developer comes in and says, I want to do lot averaging, and these number of lots is going to be 80 feet wide and 20,000 square feet. These number of lots are going to be 300 feet wide and 5 acres each. They would then, because it's in the subdivision code, be entitled to it, and we would approve it through the planning process and through the planning commission process. And it wouldn't involve the county commission. The only thing that involves county commission is saying, yes, put that in the code. We put it in there. Okay. And it wouldn't increase density. Okay. That's this box over here. I'm sorry I confused it and brought it in the same action. I just wanted to work efficiently. And we can separate it and have the county commission make a different decision another day on that item. Coming back over to the PRUD code, as far as process and time goes, if you compare it to the existing code and the new overlay, I don't think you're going to see a significant difference in process and time, because your existing code kind of pretends like it's a legislative action as it is, which makes it really complicated and convoluted and really still puts you over here in this legislative arena. If you create a new PRUD code, obviously with our help, that says if you're shaped like this and you look like this and you provide that, then you get this. Administrative action, it wouldn't have to go through the county commission every single time. So you can do that.
That makes sense to me.
But you're putting a tight box around it. You're limiting potential innovation. You're trying to anticipate what could happen in the future, and you're saying only these things. If you leave it open to the legislative process, it's wide open, and the developer can come in and negotiate.
Can you still get variances?
Through the legislative process, you give them what they're asking for. It's not a variance. It's Yep. The other process could have variances. It could have special exceptions built into them. We want to be cautious about governing through variance, but if it meets the terms of the variance section, then they could.
Mr. Chair, given the time, I'd like to make a motion that we carry this public hearing over 2 weeks, so we got a chance to work on this. This is a lot. This is a lot that's coming down right now, and I want to make sure I understand this
Great.
a little better. Well, I'm bringing that up so we can talk about it.
I respect that very much. Before I entertain, before we vote on that, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. However, because it's a line item, I'd like to at least have, we have some public here to comment. I'd like to hear public comments on this particular item. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes for those of you in the public who have come to speak on this particular line item. Mr. Favero.
Good morning.
Good morning. Will you state your name and address, please, for our record?
Bob Favero, 2049 Bluff Ridge Drive, Syracuse, Utah. Property owner in Weber County. My concern is just exactly what you've been talking about. I think it's important that we have the flexibility of being able to have the frontages a bit flexible and the size of lots flexible for exactly what Commissioner Jenkins talked about. So we can make proper use of the land when it's being developed, because after you do that, it ends. And so you waste a lot of ground by having improper sized and awkward lots if you don't develop it right up front properly. And so I would encourage that this stay in the ordinance and that it be there available, and not only would it be there available for the developer landowner, which is what I represent as a landowner, and also for the public to know what the possibility is. The idea that it's not going to increase density should be acceptable to the public. And the idea that we're going to have a better looking subdivision should be acceptable. The idea that we make maximum use of it of the land is a good idea, not only for the tax idea that it's going to be taxed and not have a lot of open space that we have weeds on, but that we can actually use. And I think those are all good ideas. I just had a couple of other thoughts relative to that and what's brought us to this point, and that is that initially we tried to develop some land out in Weber County in the Taylor area, and we came in under the cluster subdivision ordinance prior to the one that exists now. And that provided with smaller open spaces which the residents of that community could enjoy and use and have as open spaces. That changed to now being all in one area, all the open space in one area, and all the homes in another area, which made it just like a downtown cluster, just downtown lots. I think that, and because of that, we changed our approach now. We want to go back to acre lots, acre subdivision. We won't use the cluster subdivision as it now exists simply because of a lot of reasons. One, future, I think that open space will turn into a 10-acre weed patch instead of just an acre weed patch. As farming, and it's going to over multiple years, change because those who own farms now are people who were my age or older and in that time frame of their life, and they're going to end up giving it to the kids. And a lot of those kids, and exactly our situation, are not interested in continuing the farm operation. And so the farm has to be divided, sold off, done something with, so that all the heirs can end up with their portion of the ground. So what do you do with this property that's now, in the 10-acre open space when the farmers are no longer existent to rent it? Not to mention the fact that the rent that you get on a 10-acre open space isn't going to pay the taxes, nor the water for it. And by the way, water is a huge issue that hasn't been addressed in any of this kind of conversation. And it's a problem because we're going to run out of water, but we're not doing anything to try to make sure that the secondary water would be available, not only for the homeowners or the around the homes, but in the open space. Nothing's talked about with that. But so we've gone back in our development to acre lots. So therefore, we would like to be able to make sure that we use the land efficiently. Using land that has been cut up by canals and by sewer lines, utility lines, and this and that and the other on acre lots is difficult. It's also difficult to farm. It'd be better if we had this flexibility in the code so that we can manage the size of those lots effectively and use those corners effectively rather than just have the corners available for open space, which we expect to farm. And that's difficult. Farmers have a hard time farming corners that are weird shaped and so on and so forth.
I'm going to ask you to just conclude then, please. We'll wrap up.
So anyway, we would encourage that. I would also encourage that it be put in the ordinance so that we can come knowing what we've got and be able to make the presentation and get a decision rather than have to come back. It's costly in time for you, costly in time for us, and the engineering isn't cheap. And so if we have to keep changing and changing and changing to be able to get something approved is an expensive situation. Thank you.
I've got some questions for him.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
So I find it amazing that you've gone back to 1 acre lots. You find this new cluster concept that intrusive?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, water. The districts are requiring that you have enough water and a secondary system, or they won't connect you in.
That's correct.
So that's really being handled at a different level than here.
That's right.
Is that working okay for you?
No. Well, let me put it this way. I think that the extraction by the water companies for what they want for a lot is way over what Weber Basin suggests. Therefore, the water is getting sucked up into these water companies and more than what they need to provide the service. And yet that's going to dry up a lot of areas because you're going to put that water into those companies so you can have the lots, the amount of lots you need, and the open areas are going to go begging.
Well, you know, I understand his question here. When I was in the legislature, we fought over this all the time. You know, they require so many shares of irrigation if you're going to develop a lot.
Right.
And it really ended up being a 1-to-1, 1 part ag to 1 part domestic water. And the argument in my mind to them was the fact that the ag water is in feed in an open ditch, and it's so much different than the domestic use.
Absolutely.
But in the end, when it come right down to proving it, you can't prove that. And I tried multiple years down there to do this. I served on several water committees. And in the end, everybody wants to represent that it's a 1-to-1, that's the straight cross. And by time you process the water and put it on there, it's really a 1-to-1. And I tell you, Mr. Farrell, I couldn't get off that down there. I couldn't get over that hump. Everybody said I was wrong, and frankly, I couldn't prove I wasn't.
Well, I've talked to several people at Weber Basin, and they have a recommendation as to how much water you need, and they will actually calculate based on the square footage of the house, the concrete that's being poured, the patio, the sidewalk, the this, that, how much water you actually need. But the exaction by the water companies for a lot is much, much more of that in acre feet. So
what ends up happening is the amount of money you spend for your secondary is way over what you were paying for the shares that you own. I mean, it goes up 4 or 5 times.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that should be considered, and somebody's going to take the water companies to task. I don't know who that is, but
thank you.
Thank you.
We nominate you.
Yeah.
If I had some backing, I'd do it. I think it's really unfair what the water companies are doing.
Are there any others in the audience that would like to address the commission? None being heard. I have a motion and a second to stay this public hearing for 2 weeks. Call for that vote now. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. We'll stay this public hearing for another 2 weeks. Item number J on our agenda.
So do we need to exit the public hearing? Yeah.
Just a second. You're right. You're right. You're right.
I'll make a motion we exit the public hearing and enter back into our public meeting.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second to end our public hearing and move back to a public meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I make a motion that we extend this public hearing for 2 weeks and continue it at our meeting in 2 weeks.
I have a motion to
second
and a second. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Were you and I on that? Okay. Yeah. No. I did.
Yes, I'm an
okay.
aye.
Great.
I'm sorry.
No. Sorry. They're good. Item number J would be commissioners' comments. None being heard. Item number K is adjourned. Entertain a motion.
Aye. So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.